Welcome to day 2 of our PowHERcircle challenge. And our theme for today is cohesive connection, which another topic that I'm so excited to dive into. My guest and co-facilitator today is Wendy Turner-Larsen, who is one of the amazing women that I have the pleasure of working and walking closely with. When I boil down, and Wendy can expand on this a little bit, but when I boil down the woman that Wendy is and how she leads in the world, I take a look at the depth of her experience and what she's devoted to her learning and her own growth. And it's the culmination of that I believe helps people to bring miracles into the mainstream. And thank you, Wendy, for joining us this morning. Wondering if you'd like to add anything to that brief description for those that may not know you.
Well, first of all, I want to thank those that are joining live, and thanks, Charlene, for this opportunity. I really like this format of being able just to talk like a conversation. I think you hit the nail on the head that, you know, every piece of my leadership journey, every piece of my education, I am deeply devoted to taking all of that and incorporating it into my life. And so I believe that we lead from who we are. We lead from within, and that's the cohesive connection piece. A little bit about my leadership journey. I think we also learn what we're not. So believe it or not, I started out in architectural engineering, and I liked the meetings. I liked coffee breaks. I liked being in charge of projects and meeting with the engineers and the service providers, but I hated the drawing, the drafting. So that was an eye-opener to me of what I'm not. So I quickly shifted to a very different leadership path.
Yeah, and a much needed one. Okay. So I'm just getting a little bit of feedback, and I'm hoping that we can minimize that. Wendy, if you have earphones, I might ask you to put those in.
You know what? I tried them earlier and I couldn't
Okay.
hear. So do you want me to just try quickly?
Yeah, let's try, and if not, we will make do. So I'm imagining that most of you have gotten your day 2 outline. And just before we dive into this conversation, if you haven't gotten your outline, you just need to jump onto our website and sign up for the challenge, because the framework of the challenge that goes with these conversations is actually a pretty important part of it. It gives you some context. So what we're exploring today, the theme is cohesive connection. It builds on what we discussed yesterday. And just to give you a quick overview, the question that you're pondering today is your strongest connection at this time. So thinking about, without overthinking it. So just going to, where's my strongest connection at this time? With whom? And what is it providing me direct access to? I'm going to talk about such things today as tuning in to transform. And there is a journal assignment that we're asking you to have a look at and do some self-reflection on today as well. So when we think about cohesive connection, Wendy, I'm wondering if you could help us kick off the conversation by perhaps a little bit of context in terms of how you would describe cohesive connection, and where we might be going with this conversation.
Okay, good. Cohesive connection. I see connection as incredibly important. It's what drives us. It's the core of our leadership. And so cohesive connection to me is, first of all, connection to ourselves. And secondly, connection to our inner being, spirit within. Perhaps that means for some people connection to God or the divine within. And thirdly, then connection to others. To me, that's the doing of leadership, the connection to others. And our connection to ourselves and our inner being or inner spirit within is, I believe, the most important relationship. The most important relationship is our relationship with ourselves, because all our other relationships arise from that. So that's cohesive connection, and those three pieces cohesively connect with each other. And I also think that they're not really separate. We're always moving in and out of all of these connections. Our connection to others informs our connection to ourselves. Our connection, to our leadership informs our connection to ourselves. Our connection to our inner spirit, I think, really brings a wholeness to our connection with ourselves as well. So they all kind of interweave.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
And what I love about this conversation is that it builds on what we talked about yesterday. And that was basically, to boil it right down, we talked about, know thyself to love thyself, right? Like the better that you take the time to know who you are and find your place in the world, find your meaning, the purpose, your mission, and all that good stuff. The more you put into that, the more your love for yourself magnifies. And I think sometimes those two conversations seem to be separate, right? We have these mental wellness conversations, and then we have these spiritual awareness and reflection and that kind of but not often do we hear them merging together. So that's what I love about it. I'm curious of those three pieces of connection to ourselves, to the divine, or what we believe in, the bigger than us piece. And then as leaders out there connecting with others in the world, of those three, what would you say right now for you heading into 2020? Which of those three is most alive to you right now? And why, perhaps?
I believe it's the middle one, the connection to my inner spirit, my inner being, that really activates my intuition, and this is the same for others. Why that's alive is I've spent, over 20 years focusing on helping women connect with themselves. And the piece about unraveling what is not them. And I still believe that's incredibly important. I think that is the foundation. But what I think might be missing from that is that will support a woman coming into her wholeness, her full being, and then living and leading from that, is this connection to something that's bigger or higher than ourselves. And only recently have I begun to speak about that, because I didn't want it to sound like religion. And I didn't want it to sound like this is something, people have to do. Because I've been there. I've been in the religious circles. I've been a leader in that. And I've, assumed and thought that this meant a certain thing. So the why is also because 25 years ago, when I was doing one of my master's degrees, I completed a thesis on leadership. And my thesis was on team leadership versus authoritative or autocratic leadership. And what I've seen since, I went through all the literature at that time. What I've seen since is there's not a lot new in leadership. It's being repackaged, has more current information that's getting people's attention. But what I knew back then, when people asked me, what did you learn about, from your thesis? I can't remember exactly how I said it back then, excuse me, but that it doesn't really matter about the leadership form or leadership competencies matter, of course. but it is the you as the leader that matters. And when I think back to the good bosses that I've had, they maybe weren't the most articulate or knew everything about leadership, but they were a person that I felt like led from their core. They were more, we use this word authentic. I try to avoid it, sorry. And so that's why I think this intuition and this connection to our inner spirit is so important, because we have all the tools. We know what leadership competencies are. We know how to do strategy. We know what a leader is supposed to be. And things are more complex today. And with technology, things move a lot faster. Leaders are required to make quick decisions, connect with their employees. So how do they do all of that? And so with the complexities of leadership, I really think that it's time to integrate this, conversation like we're doing today about intuition.
I love those thoughts, Wendy. And I think the piece that I'd like to chomp on with you for a few minutes is your thinking, what you said around, there really isn't, from 20 years ago, you did this thesis, there really isn't that much new in leadership. And I'd like to kind of jump in on that as well. As you know, my biggest learning about leadership comes from my learning about fitness and lifestyle and pulling those lessons over. And what you see out there in society, and I'm going to do the dance between lifestyle and leadership just for a moment. What you see out there in society is a whole lot of excitement about keto and low carb and high carb and medium carb and fasting and this exercise, CrossFit, and it's really for someone who has been practicing a certain lifestyle for over half of my life, and my husband as well. We look at it and watch it and kind of go, wow, okay, there's just basic fundamentals that you just need to do the work. You just need to do the work, and you need to do it every day. You need to commit to it, and you just keep doing it. It's a practice. And all of those exact same things, we've made leadership into this multi-cajillion-dollar industry. But if you boil it right down, it is as simple as you say, connect with yourself, know where you fit into the world and what your beliefs are, and then use that and as you connect with others. And if we just get back to those fundamentals, we're always looking for that new thing, and I'm not sure that that's the right direction.
I love that. I love what you said, and the tie into physical health, and that there's a new way of eating, there's a new way of exercising, etc., and that it's really not that complex. But what I think when you say that is, because we've lost this connection with ourselves, where we're focusing on the doing and the right thing, and this connection to something higher than ourselves, we've lost our trust in ourselves, and so we're looking to attach to something new, something better, to create what we want. When I think to create what we want in terms of our own self, and then in our leadership, I think the focus needs to shift back to what's getting in the way, the connection to ourselves, because that's still happening. And then accessing, this inner connection to something that's higher, and where our intuition rises.
Well, just like yesterday when, Catherine had that one nugget, and I was like, okay, that's what we're meant to hear today. I think the nugget for you really is, what would life and how we lead look like if we had insurmountable, like just epic trust in ourselves? How might life look different? How we lead look different if we could, if trust was just right there? Yeah.
Yeah, good question. I feel personally like I'm always navigating that. And the Powerhouse conference last week really highlighted for me a gap where I'm not fully stepping into that yet. So that's uncomfortable, and I feel kind of annoyed at myself. But we need these things like this outside of ourselves to, and I'll say, to pull us to be more, not do more. Because that's the other thing that's happening. The focus on doing and more leadership strategies really burns us out if it's not really coming from within. So this trust in ourselves and our intuition. And I'm really fortunate, this didn't happen overnight, but to have a few friends in my life where we play with our knowing and our intuition. And I try to be aware of that too, because as a coach, I try to be aware of when to pull that out in conversations, my coaching, when to just say something when I'm teaching that comes to me, in the moment, and I go, oh, yikes. And I have that moment. You know what? I don't have to say this, but I'm one of those people, I will just do it. Because I've practiced just, stepping into that knowing and bringing it forward. And sometimes nothing happens, but I'll tell you, nothing bad happens. I think nothing bad has ever happened. But there's the potential when we trust that intuition for our relationships, our connection to others, to really move forward quickly. And Charlene, you say something, the magic happens in the periphery. And I feel like that happens in my head that way. When I'm with someone, there's this other thing going on, my thoughts, my heart, what information is coming in. And that's been my risk, to pay attention to what is a softer voice than my mind voice or the person in front of me.
Right. Yeah. Well, one thing that you said that I just wanted to pull out again is it's not, it perhaps isn't easy to always operate from that place of having a high level of trust. But again, that's the whole point of the theme of this power circle, is the starfish effect. It might not be easy for me to lead a certain way, but when I know that I get to work with, walk with, and represent a whole army of like-minded leaders, my trust level goes through the roof. So every time I'm operating, and if something scares the bejesus out of me, I actually don't think about myself. That's my little trick. I flip it, and I'm like, I talk about us like we are 10,000 strong. And I act from that place, because that's how my trust level, my trust factor grows. I want to jump into our last question here, so to make sure that we give it a little bit of juice as well. And it kind of plays into the leader path, and I'm curious, just taking a few minutes to get your thoughts on this. And I'll just read you again the question, just so I get it right. But this is my point of view, but I believe that what we're looking to access. So if we quickly think about, okay, what's next for me? What do I need? What do I need? What do I need? I believe that is only accessed through our connections. I actually believe that's the only way it comes. And that's why I believe communication, and clear, concise communication, is so important. So first we find the clarity, which we talked about yesterday with Catherine. And then we find the confidence and the courage by connecting to our belief system, whatever's bigger than us and why we're here. But then it's by that listening, that softer listening, like you said, in our conversations and in our connections, that I think actually delivers to you on a silver platter. It literally does the next step, if we're brave enough to take it. I actually think it's right in front of us, but somehow along the way as leaders or as women, we've gotten it backwards, where we're out there searching for opportunities rather than leading from that place of very, very specific clarity and clearly communicating what we need with a deep sense of conviction and commitment, and then just observing like a movie what's unfolding right in front of us, and we just take the next step and the next step and the next step. I'm wondering what you think about my opinion on that, as to we've got it backwards, or in the past we've kind of had it backwards, and is there a more clear process that we should be following?
A more clear process. When you talk about your first awareness, when something comes to you, or a challenge, or you think about something, that you've got this community, I'm not sure I'm really tapped into that yet, because I've worked as a sole proprietor for a long time, and it's only been recently that some of us have come together in group, and we call it PowHERcircle as well. And challenging each other and diving into what's next for us. So my head, in terms of the process, I think it starts again with our connection to ourselves, opening to that connection to something bigger that's deeper in ourselves, and then the connection to other people. But when you're connecting to other people, you're connecting back to yourself, and connecting up as well. So I don't know if I really answered that, but the intuition piece is really powerful in our connection with others. And I because we were diving into this on one of my Facebook groups, I asked, what does intuition mean to you? How does intuition show up? So I want to talk about that, because everybody had different words, and so it's unique to you. So to create, like, there's this step-by-step process, like there's things you can do, there's a framework for information to come to you, or for that connection to happen. But some of the things they said was like inner knowing, listening. Catherine said yesterday about making space to, creating space to listen. And I believe that too. If we're not quiet, how can we hear? Some said getting out of the analytical mind. We all get information differently and unique to us. Some are more tuned into knowing. Some are more tuned into getting images in their mind. Some are more tuned into, just that gut feeling. But all of them said we need to be open to receive. They talked about tuning in. And for me, what I took from that, because this has been my path, is I have to risk being wrong. And when I talk to my clients and they're concerned about what they're getting, is this right or not? I'll say, well, consider the impact of this. This isn't going to cause any harm to people. This could actually bring things forward. And that's the trust piece. And what you were talking about, the connection to other people. And some call it listening to the gut, listening, to the heart. I actually can't really describe it, but it's in the periphery for me.
I like what you said about being in a receiving mode, because like a beacon, because I think as women, we are natural givers, but I wonder if our receiving receptors need to be cranked up a little. I know for myself, obviously, my belief system in the Creator, but I wonder if, I believe that, when you think about, okay, if there is a bigger, whatever you believe, because we're humans and sometimes we're so dense that, like, literally, I think that the only way anything bigger could communicate with us is through the conversations we have with other people.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm listening to a person, whether it's you or it's my husband or a complete stranger, I often really listen to a complete stranger. And they say something that is just like, how would they ever know that in a million years? I believe that it's, they're just the vehicle for that message that is meant to get through to me on that specific day. And that's actually one reason I love talking to strangers. So maybe not the, I don't know, maybe not the best thing, but I do, because they don't know anything. They don't know any of my baggage, any of my life circumstances, but sometimes what comes through is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really powerful. Yeah. Listening to receive, and instead of thinking about how we will always give.
Right.
And as you were talking about how you listen at a deeper level and get information, I was thinking about, like, lots of times when I'm driving, this part is science. Your brain goes into sort of, autopilot. So your brainwave is actually in almost the alpha state. The delta is when we're, now we're thinking, talking, really conscious. And I don't know about you, but lots of ideas and lots of information comes through for me.
Right.
So, when people are exercising, I think, tune in. Shar, I know you have a beautiful horse and you ride horses. And I was just thinking about that I bet things start to surface as you're, as we're in those others, what we call kind of mindless states.
Right.
We can get information.
Yeah. So great. Well, I want to make sure and allow enough time, just a couple of minutes here at the end, but I think another nugget that landed for me today was listening to receive, and literally, how do we literally think about turning up our receptor sites on any given day? And if we played with that, if we just played with that for 7 days, what might that look and feel like? So, Wendy, I know that you have a series, a weekend of excellence workshops coming up for women. I want to say next month, but tomorrow is next month. So I just wanted to allow you a couple of minutes to just briefly talk about that, in case there's someone locally in Saskatchewan that'd be interested to join you.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Charlene. So I have a Personal Excellence for Women program, and it starts with a 2-day workshop. And that's the deep dive into, the connection with you. And I've been doing this for 20 years. Of course, I fine-tuned it and brought in, newer information. But what we've seen is the process really works. And because there needs to be this unraveling piece, noticing what's getting in the way in terms of our leadership or our being. And then we follow up with 6 small group sessions. So there's 8 women or less. And that's where the rubber meets the road, where they set goals, we hold them accountable. They walk through what self-compassion means, because I believe that's the foundation of any change. They talk about courageous conversations. So that's the doing part. Because what I found with the workshop, people will send me an email, what you said, like, I tried that conversation and it didn't work. So this is where we can really work that out. And actually, Lori, who's on the call, is one of the women that helps facilitate this. So thanks for bringing that up, Shar.
Yeah, that's great. Now, I just want people to know, in case it speaks to them, and they can definitely reach out to you or to me, and I will pass it on to you. It's just going on to 8 o'clock now. I just again wanted to thank those of you who joined us live bright and early on a Monday morning. If there was one nugget that really landed for you today, that really spoke to you, I'd love to hear about it. Either in an email to Wendy or myself, or even better, in our private Facebook group that is the 7x7 PowHErcircle Challenge. And we have about 200 women in the group now, and we're just continuing to grow that through these challenges of like-minded leaders. Thank you, Wendy, very much for being with me here this morning. And I'm about to hop into that group to give us all some homework for today. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks, Charlene.
Take care.